Good morning, friends. In this class, we will discuss about various things about process of social change in India. So, let us have a deep insight about how it is happening. So, as we see during the pre-independence period, there was a rise of Indian Enlightenment, where there was modernization, westernization. Raja Raman Roy came and he gave his ideas of social change. He provided so many things in terms of laws, rules, regulations, change in study materials, change in education system, change in the perspective of society towards women. And we also see the rise of social forces, rise of reforms, sensitization, secularization, urbanization, industrialization, and so on. Here in this picture, you preferably see that Dr. Ambedkar is giving the book of Constitution to Dr. Rajendra Prasad, one of the founding forefather of Indian civilization. And we also see change in the present structure. Now, how structure and function work together. So process of change that resemble all aspects of railways, industrial, postal system, social, culture, economic and political system during the phase of colonialism. What you see, that colonial empires were building these things of railways, industries, postal system, social and cultural system in terms of railways being developed by Lord Dalhousie. He also introduced railway from Mumbai to Thane. He also introduced the postal system through which the postal and telegraph system working started in India. Then India's domestic industries were highly groomed with the mechanization, and there was rise of the foreign industries in India in terms of cotton, textile industries. So we understand the colonial experience while comprehending the modern India as a significant important in terms of modern ideas and institutional ideas which are being institutionalized through colonialism. Later we see that it was exposed that the modern ideas are being contradictory and paradoxical. For example, Indians in the colonial period read about Western liberalism, French Revolution, ideas of democracy and freedom, and they revolve around the idea of Western political thoughts, Rousseau, Hegel, Bentham, Kant, how democracy will work, how the elected representative will act as a government for the favor of development of a country, and for that matter, the running and functioning of a state. That denied the Indians liberty and freedom on the part of colonial legacy, and it contradiction of its kind that sharp many of the structural and cultural change in the modern India. We saw the formation of industries, we saw the formation of trade markets, rise of factories, laborers, and modern middle class. These all phenomena were experienced during this period. Later we see that as colonialism prevailed, it simply has a greater impact over Indian society. India's people were marked by the entry of numerous group of people at different times, establishing their rule, We see the rise of Portuguese, we see the Dutches, we also see the French colonies, we also see the far reaching impact of the rulers which were very deep in the nature. So we also see that the state of foreign trade during British Empire was such a grave that British maintained the monopoly over India's export and import. As a result, Indian industries goes declining. What we see that Indian industry started declining, and we also see that foreign trades were quite increasing. The Britishers were importing the raw materials from India, taking inside their British territory, creating them as a manufactured product in terms of clothes and other market products, and bringing back into the country of India, China, and other part of this reality where they were having the sale of these products. So in this way, Britishers exploited the Indian and Asian market totally. There was second point that net export of raw material was reduced and import of final goods were increased, and this was due to opening of Suez Canal. You see, in the upper side of Africa there is a feature called as Suez Canal. So this canal is separating Egypt from Israel. So as soon as the Suez Canal opened with help of British and French army, it made the working of empire by a larger extent, and it facilitated the trade between the Asian countries and the European world. So now in 1869 we saw that there was avoidance of African trade, there was reduction in cost of transportation, and we saw the huge drain of wealth from Indian territory. Here Indians started being exploited. In a book of Dadabhai Naroji, Drain of Wealth, we saw that there was tremendous export of import of the items from the European countries, especially Britain, and the export surplus give benefit to the Britishers. They have their administrative control over India, they have their political control over India, and mostly they control the entire trade and commerce, which was the import of invisible items, spices, gold, so on. So this led to decline of Indian domestic firms and rise in the British manufactured products. So history is full of example of foreign territories, products, and the weaker power of the colonized countries such as India, Japan, China, and entire South Asian nations. And apart from outright village, the pre-capitalist conquerors benefited from their dominion, and by exacting the continuous flow of tribute, the whole they did not interfere with the economic base. So they somehow realized that India's economy is most needed for the development of British industrial market and British factories. So English language was used as a common language of colonial empire, and it has sided impact on it, paradoxical in nature. Now have an impressive body of literature, they have science and technology and engineering introduced by the Britishers. They also prevailed the knowing of English, which was considered as foremost a job market language, and there was rise in the British education, in which we saw the Dalit class who was started education through modern means. They were English learned. So they were learning the opportunities present in the global market, and they realized somehow that how they will be able to create opportunity for themselves, and they will have mobility in terms of equal status and control over power in voice, freedom of speech, freedom to make government, and so on. Then this happens in a way that colonials, apart from these factors, provided the exploitation of farmers. For example, the tea plant in Assam was totally taken by the Britishers, also in Jharkhand, for the export of tea. We also see that middle class has opportunity in Bengal and Madras for providing the employment to the professionals like doctors, lawyers, engineers, which were a part of the country. Further, we saw that people are carted in ships from India to work on other colonized land in the Eastern Asia, Africa, America, and many died away in their way. We saw the country like Mauritius being brought forward through the virtue of Indian laborers that were being transported to that part of the world, and most could never return. Now, many of their descendants are of Indian origin. You clearly see that population in the villages in the British period. So villages were having 85% of population having a traditional society, mostly dependent on agriculture and agro produced, and it was an agrarian economy. Mostly people were used to have wheat, rice, millets, and sugarcane, and so on. But on the other side, cities were having 15% of population. They were dependent on industry and services. So factories of textile, factories of manufacturing were witnessed in those period, and services of telegram, telephone, banking were also visualized in those period. We also see that emergence of capitalism started in India. So many of the Indian people who were rich class, which were having their resource and means of production, having privately owned and organized accumulated profits within the market system, made that their exploration in the rest of the world, splendor of wealth, resources, and unprecedented growth of science. We also see rise of industries, and they were expanded through innovation, use of technology, exchange of labor in working inside the factories, generating a huge surplus. So surplus profit was generated through the workers working in factories. So Western colonies were inextricably connected to the growth of Western capitalism that became the dominant economic system. So you realize that how economic system became exploitative in terms of capitalism. Capitalism emerged as a new form of market economy, proving the dynamism of the system. It also provides its global nature, connected market throughout the world. It has high level of production to have export, and it was providing potential for expansion and innovation. It has mobility of every caste people to get included it used the technology to ensure the profit and thereby making rich middle class traders. And this happens which led to rise of nation state as a dominant political form. Territory, population, administration, sovereignty, which is a composite of the superiority. So a nation is a system in which there is sovereignty. That means the entire power to make laws, rules, and regulation lies in the hand of people of that state. That is a democratic setup, and whosoever is the president or prime minister of that country is making the law regarding to that area. Then it has attachment of the territory which is concealed with the other territory, and there is a unity of the people in the population composition, and therefore the state with different dialectics, language, which have people who are working in different factories, employing labor, are called as a nation state. For example, we see Manchester in England, and it is industrial city with was having cottons from India, having processed to silk made of cloth, and then sold back to India at cheaper price. Also, cities like Surat and Masulipatam, Dhaka and Tanjavur were ruled by kings, and they too lost their courts. So I hope you are understanding this fact. With that, I am closing this topic. Thank you and have a nice day.